Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the Desi Sportscast football show with Nevin. And firstly, apologies, we were due to go live yesterday, but due to technical issues at my end, we were unable to broadcast the show. So we rescheduled it to our normal time, which is 5 p.m. IST on a Sunday. So firstly, yeah, thank you for putting up with the issues yesterday. But hopefully, all things will be okay today. IT will not let me down, so we can carry on with the show. So let's not wait any further. Let's bring on the main man himself. And for viewers, I hope you understand why there's a bright yellow shirt on. Hello, Nevin. How are you, my friend?
All good, all good. Like sitting on top of the table is a nice feeling, I guess.
Well, it's something that you're getting used to this season.
Yeah. I mean, I'm happy for the fans, of course. Like, I think what they've gone through for the last these many seasons, I think it's nice to see a lot of positivity, and not just for the fans. I think the whole state is bustling with energy.
Oh,
Everybody is
good.
talking about Kerala Blasters. I remember, I live on the first floor, and I remember after the match when I go downstairs, it's usually the parents. That's the first thing that they ask. They're like, "Oh wow, we won again!" And there is that collective feeling about the club, and it's nice to see.
That is really good to hear, and that's what sports does. It takes people's mind off of the things that are happening and builds up the spirit and brings joy. And it's been a while since the Blasters have been able to do that. I just have to say, I never look good in yellow. I don't think I own anything that's yellow. But you look good in that shirt, I have to say, my
Thank
friend.
you.
And but anyway, how's it been for you in the past couple of weeks?
I mean, I don't remember any episode where I've told you it's been relaxed. I've always said that I'm just working, working, working. But I think this is the most I've worked ever, and that's a lot. So there's some comedy work happening. I'm also working on a couple of series on mental health and forensics, and I'm also there is ARPO, which is like we're doing a lot of work in Kerala folklore and history. And on top of that, I'm sure I'm missing something here.
Well,
Yeah,
there's
I'm
one.
also working. I'm actually working on an Indian football podcast as well. It's a commission podcast, and there is a new a company that's going to come to India in the coming months. So we are making a podcast on something Indian football. I can't delve into the details, but that's incredibly fun. So
That'll
so
be
many
really
things
good to
happening.
hear as well, and I'm glad they came to the main man for that as well. So good on them. Hopefully, uh, Desi Sports Guys had something to do with that. But no, the thing is that
Absolutely.
if you weren't busy, I'd be really worried. If you had a quiet week, then I'd be DMing you a lot more, thinking, "Are you
Yeah,
okay? Are
for
you
sure.
okay?" So that's good to hear. Now,
I think that's our relationship. I think whenever you asked what's been up, I've only replied, "I'm just busy with work." I don't think I've ever replied saying, "Hey, all's good. I'm chilling and taking a vacation." I don't think I've ever done that.
yeah, but you're doing work that I would enjoy. I'm really busy at work, but I'm doing something that just to bring the money in to pay the bills. Anyway, let's get into the show. And it's a good show today in the sense that we're bringing back a friend of the show. I always say that it's beautiful to see the background to your scenes whenever you're outside and some of the photos you share. But this is another region of our country that is beautiful and always good to see. And it's even more better when we can welcome in a supporter of the Highlander who's been on the show before. Welcome to the show, Aaashirvwad. How are you, my friend?
Thank you. I'm doing really good. Thank you. How have you been? It's been, I think, almost a year since we last spoke about Indian football in particular. A lot of things have changed, I think, since then. The first wave, the second wave, different strains, and new season. So, yeah, we're happy to be here.
It's really good to have you as well, my friend. Yeah, it has been a year since we last spoke, and we were looking forward to a playoff surprise, a shock. Unfortunately, it didn't pan out that way in a tight game. But how's the past year been for you? And how's I mean, we have to talk about it because we're still coming out of it here in the UK. But it must have been a tough year for you in the. Oh, by the way, Nevin, obviously, Aaashirvwad from the North East, a beautiful part of our country.
Yeah. Hi, Naveen. I think First of all, congratulations for a pretty successful season so far for Kerala
So far,
Blasters, and
underline so far.
yeah, because it's football, and
Yeah, it's
yeah,
very
hopefully
unpredictable.
you guys are doing really well with the whole setup and all, with the approach that you have with the new coach. And so hopefully this year is the year that your hard work comes to fruition, because as a fan I can relate to you. It's difficult. It's more difficult to be to keep yourself engaged with the team that you love at times when things are not going well and things are not falling into places. But I think now is the time, and one should always enjoy the ride. Yeah, speaking
Ashirwad,
of the year.
I just want to
Yeah,
jump
yeah.
in that and clarify that in this show I am a Kerala Blasters fan, but not necessarily always. I love the club. I love the sentiments associated with football in Kerala, but I'm not like you in terms of you. I know how much you love Northeast. I know how much effort you take in. I don't hence I don't think I deserve to be called the fan the same category, but I'm obviously happy that this is a club that's like what 10 minutes away from the stadium is like 10 minutes away from my home. So obviously a lot of almost all people that I know support this club and love this club. So I'm more of a neutral leaning towards Kerala Blasters supporter than like an explicit KBFC. But like in this show, I'm clearly KBFC. You have to
That's what
thing
he's
going on.
associated with, Ashirwad.
Yeah.
But before we get into the football, how's the past year been in terms of COVID in the Northeast and where you are?
Well, in the country, I think it's been quite difficult. The second wave, I think it hit India pretty bad. But surprisingly, because of whatsoever reasons unknown, Northeast in India did not have that much of an impact. Maybe because of the climate or because of the lifestyle, or whatever reasons I'm not aware of. But it was not as big as it was in the rest of the country. But yeah, it was difficult because of the lockdowns, and it kind of takes toll on your mental health as well. Balancing work and your private life. So things shifted to digital completely. We were all sitting inside our houses and working from home. So it was difficult. It was similar to what people were experiencing in other parts of the country. But I think in terms of numbers, if we have to say, this region was not hit as bad as if we compare it to the rest of the country. But yeah, overall, I think the scenario was pretty grim because of course, obvious reasons. But yeah, I think it's human nature to keep going, and we have passed that stage. Of course, we have had different new strains of COVID now. The new strain of Omicron has entered this region as well. But it's been we cannot say it has been a very great year for every one of us, in terms generally, in terms of in generally speaking. But yeah, I mean, there is always a sense of optimism whenever a new year we step into a new year. I mean, just a change of number, but still, it's human nature to be
Yeah,
optimistic. So yeah, so let's hope that this year we get to see. I don't expect to go back to the normal that we had before COVID, but what I expect is to be more, to get used to the new normalcy that we are getting to see right now. I mean, I'm sure even in UK, things have been pretty bad. COVID had a very massive impact on UK, and so with the new strain and also, I'm not sure how people are coping up with it, or how the government services are coping up with it. But uh, we cannot say it's same, but it's similar in terms of how people are dealing with it. So,
yeah,
I
and
mean, if you could shed some light on it, yeah.
yeah, a couple of things. Yeah, we're coming out of it now. The government made a decision last week. We're just going to live with it. It's going to be one of those things that we're going to have spikes, especially in our winters. So we'll just have probably a booster jab just prior to that, which we do for the flu. You'd be surprised the number of people that die in this country through the flu. Pretty much all restrictions have been lifted from Thursday. So, I mean, we've been relatively open anyway. We've been going to football and mass gatherings. Certainly in England, have been happening. So, and nightclubs and everything, restaurants, it's all pretty much as normal has been since Christmas. So, yeah, it's something that, like you say, we have to live with now. I think something you have to get used to, certainly in Europe, because of the climate that we have. You mentioned the word optimism, if I can say it right, that when the new year starts, we always have optimism when the new football season starts. And the North East, after, like I said, a very tight playoff loss, but a good end to the season, you must have been going into the new season with a bit of hope for a, not maybe the same, but hopefully a good season. And on the back of that that last season, I want to start off with asking you your thoughts and the thoughts of fellow Highlanders on Khalid Jamil being appointed the first full-time Indian manager. What were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, we were not surprised with the appointment. We actually kind of hoping for it to happen because of the way the team perform. I think he's kind of a leader that everyone looks up to in the dressing room. I mean, if Khalid speaks, then you listen. There is a kind of an aura that he has inside the dressing room. And Well, he's not that much of an extrovert in terms of camera. He's not kind of a camera person. When when you see his interviews, he's being very straight. He's always very straightforward, and he keeps his words to himself. And But when it comes to dealing with the players or the tactics, I think he has a clear vision on how he wants to run the club or the team, if I have to say. So last season when we had that run after Gerard Noose was his contract was terminated and Khalid Jamil was appointed as the interim manager. That run we had from his first match to the second leg of the semi final, I think it was pretty much clear that he had a very big impact on the club in terms of the tactics and holding the dressing room together. Uh, when we stepped into the new season, I would rather say that I was a bit more optimistic at the end of the season than compared to the start of the season, because of the personnel that we had and the change in personnel that we had in that gap in the transfer window. Of course, Khalid Jamil cementing his place as the manager, or the management taking the decision to put Khalid as the first Indian head coach, full-time head coach. Obviously that is kind of a thing that you always look forward to from the perspective of an Indian football fan. I mean, it gives way to other, aspiring coaches who are, trying to get into the coaching setup. That there is obviously a chance and there is obviously a scope to get into the big leagues. But I think, like I said, I had more hopes towards the end of the season, or by the end of the season, than compared to the start of the season, because of the personnel change that we had. We lost, four or five really good players during the transfer window. We definitely had to revamp our squad, and I think it's always difficult to have that consistency if you do not have similar set of players in certain positions. It's been a fact historically, if you can see in all the other leagues or all the other clubs, that to sustain and to have a certain consistency, you need those personnel. You cannot make a wholesome changes. So I think we
Yeah,
were hit by that as well
yeah, and we'll come
when the
into the
season
squad
started.
changes and the big losses you had. But Nevin, I know you've been crying out for a full-time Indian coach being allowed to coach an ISL team, and you've said a lot of good things about Khalid. So, and it's good to see that the club is still backing him.
Yeah, but I wish they back in. I think I completely agree with Aaashirvwad in terms of the personnel changes is just so much for a club to cope with. They should have maybe Apoya. You can't stop such transfers, but like generally with the foreigners, it's easier to keep them on board and also generally have a good core, right? Any successful team has a good backbone that goes from the goalkeeper to the forward. So I think that backbone has been missing, but I'm sure Khalid Jameen will find out who he wants to work with. I've had the privilege to watch the last two matches of North East United, and I was pleasantly surprised. They're a very, I think they're a very cohesive unit. They've been very unlucky hitting the post, and I've been particularly impressed with fellow state person Suhair. I think he's been a very good forward. So I think this generally, I think Northeast it's been a little unlucky, and it's also a very difficult season, right? We've seen it like stop due to coronavirus. I think a lot of these players coming out, players and coaches coming out and saying that they're mentally exhausted, they're worried about getting sick. So I think this season's ISL has just generally been um, what do you say, in the last 2 weeks especially low morale. So uh, I, I I think I don't even watch ISL anymore, thinking of properly analyzing it and all. I'm just watching it like, okay, football's going on, so I have to watch it. But I think Sunil Chetri, captain of the Indian team, also came out and talked about it. So it's a reality. Everybody is facing a lot of difficult times inside the bubble, which has sort of taken the sheen away from what is actually happening on the football pitch, and people are just getting through the matches. So I think that's taken away quality in general. But I saw the match against Odisha. I don't think Northeast was bad against Chennai. Chennai are a very good team. Maybe they didn't take enough chances, and Chennai were more clinical. So I don't think. Of course, I'm not a fan of Northeast United, so my feeling of the for the club is a little different. But I still think there is enough there for a fan or a supporter to be optimistic, because I mean, as an analyst, as a journalist, I do see a lot of positives on that side.
Yeah, and we'll talk about the season. And apart from a couple of games against Hyderabad and the opener against Bengaluru, I mean, they've been close, tight games. But Nevin mentioned in terms of personnel changes, and you did as well, Aaashirvwad, the big one obviously being Apoya going for, I don't know, I might have misread this, but a record fee for ISL.
Yeah.
But if it was in England, the expectation would be that that fee would be reinvested in some signings. But when you look at the players that you brought in, they were pretty much all free transfers. Is this the reality of North East United, that the money is not available, even if they bring in through transfers?
Um, yeah, I think over the time we as fans have accepted where we are financially in the league. Or losing Apoya, like Nevin mentioned, it was a big blow because he was one of the core members of the squad, and of course one of the most promising talents of the country. Uh, and it's very difficult to find a like for like replacement for a player like Apoya, who usually does all the stuff in the midfield, carrying the ball, dribbling, passing, tackling. So pretty much he had everything in his locker, but he, of course, he had a huge potential to develop. And yeah, it's like when the big boys come calling, it's very difficult to say no to, in terms of money as well as the project. So Mumbai City FC, owned by City Football Group, I think they had a plan in mind regarding Apuya, and I think he bought it, of course, because personally for him it would definitely be a better chance of growing because of the facilities that CFG would provide, or the scope of even playing preseason abroad. So that, from that point of view, I understand why Apuya took that step. But the reality of the club, of our club, is that even if we could have retained some players, I think I have no idea why the club did not choose to. And there was a wholesome changes between in all different positions, whether it's the center back pairing that we had last season. We lost both the center backs. One of the top scorers from the attacking side, Louis Machado, was not retained. And then of course the right back was, again the big boys came calling, Ashutosh Mehta, he went to ATK Mohan Bagan. So it's difficult when the big clubs, they approach you with a good amount of money. But it's quite baffling for us as fans, because we did get good money for Apuya, and it was kind of, well, if I have to say, kind of thrift shopping that the club went for, rather than a planned way of revamping the squad. I mean, now if now there will be a section of followers or fans who would blame the coach for bringing in the players, but I think it all depends on the management as well, how they provide the money to the to the coach, and how things work out between the coach and the management as well. I mean, you cannot get good players. I mean, at a cheaper rate. It's a reality of today's football. You cannot get amazing. Of course, you cannot get amazing players, but you have to be very lucky to get good players at a very low rate, low price. So if I have to calculate, I think we lost six players from last season. Apuya, Lambo, Fox, Ashutosh Mehta, Louis Machado, Ninthoi was one of the hottest prospects that was let go. And so if we have to talk about midfield, I think Hernan Santana was someone who was brought in, an experienced campaigner. He previously played for Mumbai City as well. The plan was to play Santana in the middle, and like Nevin mentioned, I think the club has been a bit unlucky as well in terms of for results as well as the injuries, because injuries again pushed Santana you know to play as a makeshift defender. So it kind of rattled what Khalid had in his mind. But all in all, I think yeah, the reality is that if we are getting a lot of money from a player, uh, we as fans are rarely expecting to have a planned expenditure or a planned transfer season, unlike the other clubs that I mean, if you want, I can name that there are other clubs who have been very diligent and very they've gone ahead with proper planning. I mean, Hyderabad FC, if I can mention, is one club that I have followed since last season, and the way they have maintained their squad, retained pretty important players. They lost one of the attacking talents in Colacho, but I think the way they have brought in players who can replace him. I mean, if you cannot replace a player, get a like for like replacement, then you bring in two or three players who can complement that position. So I think those kind of planning we are not able to see in our club, and that is the reason I think a similar thing we happened in 2018 and 19 when we reached the semi final for the first time. People, of course, they have fans have a lot of hopes and expectation once you reach same final, because these are the things that really unfortunately rarely happen with our club. But when it happens, I think the club and the management needs to capitalize on it, and uh, plan it pretty well, so that the club can sustain. It should not be a stopgap approach that we lost a player, let's fix it with five six players, and just to keep the boat afloat. So I think yeah, that is the reality of the club right now.
Another reality, Nevin, and this is what Ashirwad said, is that a team like North East, they build up the hopes in terms of they got to the playoffs, so you think they're going to build on that. They sell Puya for a record amount of fee. You expect them, all right, you're not going to get another Puya, but you get a couple of players from that fee to strengthen your team all round, which is what normally happens if I'm talking about my own club, Leicester. And by the way, I'm still haven't recovered from Wednesday. Still under therapy after that result. With Northeast, they have a good season, then they go down. They have a good season, then they go down. Yet, in the sense of placings and what have you, there seems to be something lacking there where they can't build on a good season. Because when you look at the previous year, they finished in a good place, but the following season they've gone down in the table again.
Yeah, I think Ashirwad sort of explained what is going on with the club perfectly. I think he's hit the right nails. And the biggest problem is that what happens in the summer for Northeast United is bewildering. They just, as a club, I might be a little brutal, but they just switch off, and then they wait for other clubs to make their moves, and then like 1 month before the season, they again start looking for players, and that's not how a football club should be run. So that's like a big worry for me. Every summer this happens, and I know Ashwad is going to agree. Even the seasons they've done well, it's not like there was a great level of optimism in the summer. It just so happened that they got a good team and they got a result. It never was like, oh yes, this season we're going to really go all the way, and there's a lot of expectation. It's usually okay. There's a new team here. Let's see if it's going to work out or not. And that's sort of, as a fan, that must be so frustrating that you have to you have nothing. There's no communication with the club for good 6 7 months, and then it starts again. Then there's a new set of players. It must be very tiring. So I've always been a big like I've always criticized, even with Apuya, they knew this was going to happen for ages. Like literally everyone associated with Indian football has been talking about this deal for I don't know how. I think we were talking in last season as well. So I think in fact it's Lobera who wanted Apoya in Bombay, and eventually he was not there. But so we've been talking about this deal forever that they didn't find a replacement. And central midfield is not a very difficult space to find. Also, there are a lot of good talent out there. I'm sure, say somebody like a Princeton Rebellos, struggling to break through in FC Goa. Maybe he would have been, he could have been bought and to the central midfield. Somebody, you can. There's a lot of talent out there in India, and my biggest problem is okay. It's absolutely fine if Northeast wants to take a feeder club approach. Not everybody needs to be an 80K or a Mumbai City. But then, how do you be a feeder club? Then you invest back in your youth teams. You invest back in your scouting. And I must say, Northeast I mean, it's immense potential. It represents so many footballing states with so distinct cultures of promoting football. And the fact that they are not doing enough, I think, at the grassroots levels to bring these players to a platform, I think that's a little worrying because I think if you look at a club like say Shillong Lajong, Shillong is not too far away from Guwahati, okay, and they used to be a factory for footballers. They used to just bring in good footballers and and then sell it to big teams, then have another set of players come in. All this Bipin, Radim Tlang, all of them came from that setup, even though they played for say in this case Redim's case Northeast, they come from a different setup, and that is where I think Northeast really needs to do something. Maybe if they can't do it, at least have associations with smaller clubs in the region and have that constant, because it's not like Northeast has any shortage of footballers. Any position, anything that you want, you will have footballers there. I think that system is not in place, and that's a little sad considering the potential that they sit on.
Absolutely, Ashirwad, and this is something that Nevin and I find frustrating about the Northeast United. Well, you'll tell me it's different, but in terms of the structure and the recruitment, because like Nevin says, whether you talk about women's football or men's football, there's countless players from the Northeast playing in for top clubs in India, and you could think that Northeast has got such a talent pool that they could benefit from. Not only benefit in terms of the for Northeast United in taking them to the playoffs on a regular basis, but also
Yeah.
Apuya being the classic example, financially benefit from the sale-on fees, and just build that momentum, don't you, in terms of bringing the players through, selling them, but still having a good team that is competing every year in men and
Yeah.
women.
Yes, yes, definitely. I think, well, I usually have this discussion with my friends that I have a dream team of Highlanders where all the 11 players are from Northeast United and they're playing in different clubs right now in ISL. And I do not have the list with me, so maybe someday I'll share it with you. But I think if I put the team out to play, um, I think they are a good contender for top four. I mean, every player in the position, you name it. I mean, Suresh Wangjam and Apuya in midfield. Salar Manjan Singh. There are a lot of players. Jackson Singh Thongjam. Changte is there. So there are a lot of players. Who are doing pretty well in other clubs. But my father usually he asks me the same question, that why are players from Northeast not playing for Northeast United Football Club, and the reason being that I think there is a lack of project, and well, I'm not demanding the owners to spend money left, right, and center. It just has to be very smart spending, systematic planning where you can plan to have a sustainable project. I think the club has lacked that. There is a lack of vision, and like I said, it's kind of a stopgap approach that the management has tried to do. You lose one player, and just to maintain your business, if I have to say, it's run like a business and not like a sports club. The area is full of talent. The region is full of talent, and it's undoubtedly full of talent for men and women teams. Investment in youth is something that we have been crying for the past 2 or 3 years as a supporters club, and well, of course, the first thing that comes as a response is that the COVID has struck, so
Yeah.
we're not able to. Yeah, that is of course something that we have to take into account. But I think even before COVID came into the scene, there was not much aggressive investment or planning regarding youth in and around the club in the region. We initially, for when the league ISL started, we initially had this arrangement with Shillong Lajong Football Club. I don't know what kind of arrangement they had, but Shillong Lajong FC and Northeast United FC were working in tandem, and it kind of paved way for many youngsters from that club into this club. That kind of, if that kind of approach was distributed among other clubs in the region, I think it would have benefited the club more, rather than being, like Nevin mentioned, being a feeder club. Who usually unearths talent, and then you eventually lose them to a bigger club. uh, uh, Apuya being a classic example, and I think what I'm feeling right now, my gut feeling is that this season, one of the best players of the club has been VP Suher, and this is my gut feeling that we're going to lose him again next season. uh, Probably to Kerala Blasters, because it makes sense, because it's a home club. But that's my gut feeling, that whenever there is a player who's performing well in Northeast United Football Club, they tend to move away because of the lack of project and lack of vision that the management has in terms of how they want to carry the club forward. And it's completely opposite to what other clubs are trying to do. I mean, you name it, Orisha, whether it's Orisha or Hyderabad. Uh, I mean, retention of player is not just about money; it's about motivating them to stay. I mean, of course, money also plays a part, but I think the project also in totality has to be quite lucrative and attractive, and it has to motivate the player, because ultimately they're playing for the passion, and money is also a part of it. But of course, footballers are footballers because they like to play the game. So I think that is one factor that we have always been putting across when we have this conversation with the management, or among ourselves, that there's a lack of vision and lack of structure in how the club is being run.
And Nevin, I mean, I think you'll probably, well, you will correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think the Northeast and Goa are two clubs that can just pick from their own states or the surrounding areas, full of talent. I mean, for an example, in the Northeast, if they were to run summer trials in the 7 states and just pick up five, and there's going to be more than five boys and girls every year, they'd be potentially having 35 young guys coming into a central structure. And even if you get one player like Abuya every 2 years, they'll be self-financing. And the same applies to Goa. But Goa, at least in a way, is putting in a bit of a structure to get that
Yeah.
system going.
I think Goa, in Goa's case, the biggest advantage is it's one state, and secondly, I think they
I
are
think that's an
helped by the.
advantage for Northeast. You got 7 states.
No, but we must sometimes acknowledge that they are very distinct states with distinct cultures,
Yeah,
and so
yeah,
it's
yeah.
not like sometimes I think as mainlanders we sort of like look at it as a very collective unit, but they are distinct states. And I've always been a personal believer that you need more than one Northeast United there. You need, I think, the likes of say an Aizwal or a Neroka or any of these clubs also playing
Just
in the
hold that
top league.
thought.
You
Let me
need.
take Ashirwad's response to that. Do you need another club in the Northeast?
Uh, well, to start off, I think the idea of 8 states united that the owner had, I think it's not realistic, like Nevin said, and it's about time that we acknowledge that there is the distinct culture that we have. So in terms of football clubs, I think I wouldn't mind another 2 or 3 clubs playing in the I League. I mean, of course, it would seem like we're dividing the fan base, but ultimately your um, collective goal is that the region produces football talents, and the region is flourishing in terms of football. But personally, right now, at this moment, I would not mind a couple of clubs coming in from the region, and plying their trade in the ISL.
And Bharat, if I may add, and Ashwad will be the better person to say this, but Guwahati is not the center for football. So, like, you want the sort of the mecca of football to have a football club there, because if there's if there's like an Aizawl or if there is like a Shillong where there is a massive group of footballers there, these kids cannot come to Guwahati for training or something. You need to have infrastructure there, and you need to have like the setup going from those locations itself. So something like an Imphal or like an Aizawl, all these places, Shillong, all these places need to have at least an I League club, but even I League has become such a way that it's not sustainable anymore to run a football club in I League, and
This
there's no money in exactly. So I personally feel And this is something that the Indian football fraternity, including FSDL, should look at. Because, say, another club in Northeast is also a rivalry. There's also a lot more passion at stake. I think that is going to just overall like increase the conversation and love for football in this space. And also, if I may add, this is some point I wanted to go back to, is that Goa has a very I think well-run state league as well. So that's been, I mean, we might, I mean, we give credit to FC Goa where it's due, but it's very easy for them.
Mm.
All they need to do is send a scout to the Goa Pro League and just watch the best players, and they are the best club in the town. So everybody
Yeah.
wants to sign for FC Goa. I think in case of Northeast, that's also a task because not a lot of these state there is. I mean, Manipur is doing quite okay, but we still need a better structure there, and a lot of those grounds. I think the infrastructure is so bad that I've seen. I mean, at least 2 3 years ago, it's not played. Even personally, I went to Kohima for a football match. Oh my god! Like the fact that they can play football in that ground itself is a big achievement. But you won't get the best footballers out there if they are like battling the terrain more than the football itself. You know, they're just slipping and falling in this clay and mud
Mm.
uh, and fog, so you can't see anything as well. So it's just a lot of challenges like that. So I think there's a lot happening, and I don't know what happened. Again, Ashwad, if you have some information to let me know, because I think say post 2010, a lot of FIFA funds did go to Northeast states. If I remember right, I think Mizoram got a little bit of it. Manipur obviously got the chunk of it. I don't know where this is going to, right? Because in terms of, I know a lot of artificial turfs popped up in Mizoram, especially, and Manipur. But then, are they being used properly? I still think the infrastructure exists, but it's not being run properly due to how things are in Indian football. So this is a it's a mess. It's sort of to blame Northeast United for the entire thing is also completely unfair because I think, see, I'm just thinking out loud here. If it was so easy for Northeast United to just go find footballers and have these scouting tournaments, they would have done it, right? So
Well,
you have to also ponder what is stopping them. Is there like internal politics?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I think because a lot of if you look at the Northeast states, a lot of important politicians also run football. Football is like a big deal, right? That's a big vote bank, and a lot of influential politicians are behind football there. So obviously, I don't think it's as easy as what you and I say from our comfortable home, saying, "Oh, why are they not doing enough?" and all. Maybe there is uh, of course, they are not doing enough. I don't think I want to take that away from Northeast United. They are not doing enough, but maybe the challenges are bigger than what it seems.
Well, if there's anything successful, there will be a politician soon on the bandwagon, so there's no surprise there. But just before you come and answer Nevin's question, Ashirwad, I spoke to Samir, who's a Gore, a big supporter of FC Goa, and he was telling me about the structure there, and like Nevin says, a really good state league. But also, a couple of the historical clubs are looking at coming back into the I League and then ISL when promotion relegation comes into it. So if a small state like that can do it, and I totally take on board the issue about 8 states in Northeast and the finances. What are your thoughts on the back of what I've said, what Nevin said about the finances that came into the Northeast and the structure, state leagues, and outside football influence from other stakeholders?
Uh, well, yeah, I think Nevin is correct to a certain point that we cannot blame the club completely that they have not been able to do the things that we expected them to do. There are other stakeholders involved in this as well, like the state government, who are they willing to, you know, are they showing any ambition in terms of a footballing project? I think states like Manipur, Mizoram, Meghalaya, they are football oriented states. Football is the core in terms of sporting abilities there. And I think Mizoram and Meghalaya, even in Manipur recently, they have developed their infrastructure in when we talk about football. I'm not aware of the finances that came in the region, but when I talk about Assam particularly, Assam has always been. I mean, till 80s I think Assam was a completely football crazy state. you know uh, We had a lot of players from Assam who used to play in I League as well. And so now what happened is that after from the late 80s till date, I think Assam has shifted its gaze towards cricket more than football, and it has become a cricket oriented state. The more emphasis is on the cricketing boards that are there in the state, and rather than on football. So if I have to, I mean, until Northeast United Football Club came into existence, I don't think people here were that much interested in local football in cities, especially in big towns. I mean, in smaller towns we do have individual domestic leagues in different tea states of Assam. We have different leagues from where we can see players like Halicharan Narzari coming up and making a name for himself in the national scene. Uh, but yeah, I think when we talk about infrastructure and the involvement of the external factors, I think Assam has lacked in that scenario. Of course, the 90s and the 2000s, early 2000s were a time where we had other socio-political issues in the state as well, which kind of hampered
Yeah.
not just progress for things like sports, but other things as well. Basic infrastructure, or when we talk about the you know achieving the SDGs and whatever the things that you see as a whole, the holistic development. I think the state, it was hit pretty bad. Not just the state, but I think the whole region, it was hit pretty bad because of the other socio-political issues. Uh, but the reason I try to put my finger on Northeast United Football Club, because since the inception of ISL, I think they were an entity that people put a lot of hopes on, that this is the club that try to bring everyone together and be the kind of savior of the regional football. Of course there were other clubs who are playing in I League who are doing really well. Neroka, Aizawl FC even won the league. Shillong Lajong has been producing a lot of talent. So there are other clubs definitely, but I think on the bigger stage, just whether it's fortunate or unfortunate, because I League has taken a backseat and ISL is now the Premier Footballing League in India. And so we all looked up to Northeast United as an entity that would try to you know uh, invest in football, that the state governments were not able to do as much as we like them to do. When we compare scenario with Goa, I think it's very. I think completely. I agree with Nevin that it's very easy compared to us because they have a state-run league and there's just one state where you just need to go and scout different players. Whereas here, the infrastructure and the commutation, I think it is the main problem. Traveling from one place to another because of the terrains or other issues that we may face, it's difficult for the scouts and the analysts to move around and then get the things that they want or the talents that they want to see. But I think with proper planning, it could have been done. I mean, if Northeast United started off with a collaboration with Shillong Lajong FC, I think uh, the next year they could have done that with other clubs as well. And once you have that kind of a collaboration, I think it's easier to get the datas that you want to, and then that would, I mean, you do not even need to invest in a separate infrastructure or a separate reserve team. Just invest on the just I mean just have a collaboration with the teams that you have, that you have from the region, and then ask them to scout players that they usually do. I mean, if you just put some money on the way the other clubs are functioning, I think it eventually will give you the results that you want, rather than having completely new setup. And that is what Northeast United, I think it backfired for them, because they cut their terms with Shillong Lajong and then they wanted to have a completely different setup of their own. And the issue that I think Nevin also mentioned is that it's difficult for young players or young experience to move from different parts of the region to Guwahati, because of course it's the issue with the traveling, and then you have to stay here, the accommodation. So there are a lot of things that are involved. The education as well. I'm not sure if the club is taking care of that. I mean, in England, UK, I know the clubs, they take care of the education as well. And I mean, if someone is from a different place, then accommodation is also taken into account. But I don't think NUFC as a club is financially as well equipped as you want them to be to take care of all such things. I mean, I personally know how much Apuya used to get as salary from the management. So these are things that are quite public, and it's usually treated as a job, not as a. I mean, you don't treat a player like a project. I mean, the club has been treating players like employees. I mean, if you're performing well, then you're here, and if you're performing really well, and then someone is here to take you off our budget list, and it's well enough. So these are the things that I see that are the negative sides of the club. Of course, they have invested in the reserve league, but it's not spread around the region. I mean, you hardly hear player from the innermost areas of the region, whether it's Assam or Sikkim or Mizoram or Arunachal, coming here and playing the trade and then making their way up to the first team. So it's very rare. We the players that we have from the region are either being brought from other clubs, or I think it's mostly we're buying players from other clubs who are basically from this region. But I don't see any player coming up through the ranks, and making their way into the first team.
Yeah, and that's really sad. And like I said, we've shared a few of our own thoughts in terms of what the process could be, taking into consideration the financial issues, the traveling issues, and what have you. What could potentially be there? But just before I come to a question from a viewer, GK Roshan, very quickly, Ashirwad, do the state leagues pre-pandemic, were they happening on a regular basis in any of the states?
I'm sorry.
Were the states leagues taking place pre-pandemic?
Uh, well, there are no state leagues as such in. I mean, the leagues are not well organized. It's kind of it's not proper planned. I mean, there are clubs from Assam who play in a league. I think in the third or fourth division. I'm not sure. Uh, one of the clubs from where Halicharan Narzari made his way to North East Utd Football Club, and now he's in Hyderabad. There are leagues, but it's not well organized that you see or you want them to be, and it's quite sad because the region has so much of potential that if you organize and make them play regularly, you can unearth gem every year. I mean, like you mentioned, I think we can get solid players, couple of players every year who can knock on your first team, and then they're. I mean, you can rely on them to have a good role to play in any club that you want, because what the kids need right now is that a proper infrastructure or proper setup where they can play regularly and learn from the best. It also boils down to the number of coaches that we have in the region. I think it's very less if you compare to other footballing states in the country. And Well, now people are actually they're taking interest, and I know a friend who got his D license recently. So I know a couple of people personally who are taking interest in this and taking a step, so that they can contribute for their fair share of their knowledge in the game. But in
And
terms of answering your question, I don't think there is any properly well run
well, that
state
leads
league.
me to the question from GK Roshan. This is for you, Nevin and Aaashirvwad. This is your knowledge. He asks, besides players, do you think that coaches from the North East region are getting enough credit for their job, considering the performance of Aizol, Neroka, or Trau in the I League?
I'll answer that question, and I'll also add a little bit context to what Ashik was saying. He was talking about Assam, and the state league structure there, and it's a little worrying, like he said. But I think the other positive side of it is I think Mizoram Premier League even had like a
Hmm.
Sony streaming to it. So and it was actually quite well done in the last couple of seasons. So Mizoram, Manipur, and to an extent Meghalaya are quite good. And he
Hmm.
did highlight. I think Ashirwad did highlight that these three states have like football in their blood, and they love it so much that they will do the extra to make it sure it's accessible and like everybody can enjoy it. Um, Coming to the questions on coaches, I think Tongboy is like the the biggest example that we have. And Tongwai Simto is he sort of shot of fame from Shillong Lajong, and he was associated with Kerala Blasters. He was associated with Odisha, and I think he's like a big figure in Hyderabad's revolution as well. I think so. You can clearly understand that his knowledge in terms of identifying players and scouting players. I think he's a chief scout, and I remember last Kerala Premier League when I went to uh, watch a couple of matches. He was there as well, and he was watching football matches in the Kerala Premier League. So he's like, I think Roshan, you're right in terms of there are good coaches out there. I think there are fantastic scouts out there. I personally have met a few of them, but I also maybe I'm stereotyping in some sense, so forgive me. But I've also seen that a lot of them don't aim big enough. I've met like really fantastic people, but they see. I mean, they feel the opportunity is sort of restricted to the states there and the teams there. That not a lot of them have ventured out. It could be the lack of opportunity. So it's very. I mean, I might sound very arrogant and entitled to be, saying that they are not dreaming big enough. But personally, the ones I know, I'm not taking their names, but they've also not really ventured out of their comfort zone. They know a set, they know a particular state and culture, and they are happy working in that area. And they've not really ventured out into, so that is where somebody like a Tongboy is like revolutionary, because he's gone out there, and now you see the likes of Renedy Singh, all of them, winning plaudits in terms of their ability. So hopefully, I mean, they're fantastic footballers, and they've been proving it for the last so many years. Especially, I think in the last 3 decades, we've seen plenty of Northeast footballers. So they're all there. They're all earning their coaching badges. And say somebody like Shiloh Mama, for example, I want him to be associated with football because he's been around for so many years, and I want him to be at least, if not work. So I think coaching is not necessarily head coach, right? You can do so many other things: be working with the academy, be the scout, or like a specific training, like a forward coach or goalkeeper coach, strengthening coach. So I really hope they are encouraged, and the only way we can now do is that establish centers for coaching excellence in within Northeast itself, so that you bring them on board more easier, and you show that there's work out there, there is money out there, there's great opportunity out there, and slowly. And I think this is along with coaches, you have to talk about referees as well. I think that referees have been the central theme to ISL this season, and the lack of their quality. Give them that opportunity, get former players on board, get a lot of players don't always make it to the top leagues, right? But they have the abilities to, they have the physical abilities, they have the brains for it. So why not convert them to referees, coaches, and make them start early. I think at 25, I know that I'm not going to make a great footballer. So rather than me having to waste 10 years, another 10 years trying to be something else, can I just jump into coaching and working with football teams in terms of strengthening, whatever is my. So I think the onus is on AFF and respective state federations to have centers there and encourage people, and not just players. I think I think players will just keep emerging simply because there's like football's in the blood. There's local tournaments, so the football players will keep emerging to show that there is a professionalism side of it, that you can make money doing so many things else, and that's actual work. I think it's up to all people involved in all stakeholders of Indian football to show that there exists. So
Well,
hopefully,
I think the onus has been on the federation for a long, long time. But we still live in hope. Aaashirvwad, we have to talk about this season, and in terms of how it's panning out, it's not good to see your team, and especially with Nevin wearing that shirt, at the other end of the table. We were saying this year the bottom place is pretty much sorted. I think it's going to be East Bengal, but they've pulled off a couple of results. But to be fair to your team, and to what Nevin said earlier, the games that I've seen, and he's certainly seen live, I've just seen the highlights. They've been close games. What are your thoughts on the Highlanders in terms of how the season's panned out?
Uh, well, like I mentioned, I think the transfer season was kind of a bummer for many of us. But of course, whenever a season starts, you kind of start with a lot of optimism. The game against Bengaluru, I think losing 4-2 was pretty harsh compared to the way that we played. There were similar games where we could have, maybe nicked a win and we drew or we lost the game. Uh, when we talk about, I think numbers do not lie, but when we talk about numbers, last season we had four losses overall out of the 20 matches we played. This season we have lost already 8 matches out of the 13 that we have played. Uh, so it kind
Well,
of
a lot of
speaks
them, to
volume
be fair,
about.
have been by the odd goal.
Sorry,
I
yeah.
was going to say, to be fair, a lot of them, in fact, most of them, been by the odd goal.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I mean, uh, I think there has been a lack of confidence that we saw last season in the team, as a group. For whatever reasons, it could be the COVID, the mental health that the position, I mean, the status of mental health that the players and the staff are having. Also because of, I mean, the type of players that we have this time compared to the last season. Um, there have been moments of inspiration from players like Imran Khan, PP Suhair, and I think we were pretty unlucky with the injuries that we have this season. We of course lost Federico Gallego, and then we lost Brown, Deshaun Brown to injuries, and then I think Hasa Kamara, he went to. He was also injured for a bit, and then I think if I'm not wrong, he went for his AFCON duties. So I think there were some unlucky moments. I think moments decide the game, and if they're not with you, I mean, then I think you cannot do anything about it. But if you talk about the team as a whole, the confidence with which they used to get into the pitch, I think that confidence is lacking this season. Not just because of the recent results that we have had, or the luck that has played its part. I think it also has to do something with the chemistry among the members, because there were so many new players in the team, and then you need to get to know them, and if you're not okay with the way they play, so these are a lot of factors that I think shape the season that we are seeing right now. And being at the bottom, I think it's very disappointing, to say the least. It's embarrassing as well, because you don't expect a club affiliated to a region with so much of football heritage to be at this level year in year out. I mean, even after having a good season, the whole project has not been to capitalize on that good momentum and building on the momentum. So yeah, it's been pretty disappointing. I think uh, I have a friend from who's a massive East Bengal fan, and well, I had a bet at the start of the season that we're again gonna finish above him, but I don't think that's gonna happen right now, and he must be licking his lips. So yeah, it's more sad that we're finishing below East Bengal.
Well, I'm just looking at your fixtures, and you've got Mumbai coming up, and then Hyderabad, and the small matter of playing the current table toppers on Friday. I mean,
Yeah.
no game's easy, but the performance against Mumbai City must have given you a little bit of heart. And for a player to score a hat trick and end up not winning as well.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think the last match against Mumbai City was kind of, well,
Although
it kind of gave
yesterday's
us.
was disappointing, I take that on board as well. But the previous, I mean, the Mumbai City one gives you a bit of hope.
Yeah, yes, I think that match, I think it kind of, well, I personally thought that it just changed the way the players have looked up, approached the season. So I think there are positives from the season that you can take, but it all depends how you build on that. And I think the draw against FC Goa, or the loss against Odisha FC, where I mean, you seem to get a lot of chances but you're not converting them. The loss against Chennai last night, where we could have won by 3-4 goals. We just seem to not take our chances. uh, I think these are the matches, I mean, where last season we would have, I think, got all the 3 points because of the
Oh,
of
certainly
the
not lost.
confidence. Yeah, certainly
Yeah,
not lost. Yeah.
yeah.
So I think a lot of factors have shaped our season this time. And yeah, I mean, if I can look at the fixtures ahead, I think, um, I mean, next one is against the Mumbai City, and then well among the fixtures that I'm seeing right now, I think the most I'm scared of is the one against Hyderabad FC, because usually this is a team that kind of which enjoys playing against North East United, well, with or without Liston Colacho. And well uh, um I'm not being I'm not very optimistic about the way we're gonna finish the season, but I think this should be a lesson for the management, and everyone, that it's time to change the approach, the way that you are trying to run the club, and learn from the fellow clubs that are doing pretty well. I mean, they're having a sustainable growth, we can see in terms of their performance, or retention of players and all those things.
Well, Ashirwad, I could talk to you all day and Nevin about this, and I needed it today. Like I said, it's part of my therapy to get over the result we had on Wednesday. But Ashirwad, to give you a bit of hope, and all the Highlanders who will listen to the podcast or watch the show later on, next season is your season if we go by past records. Because I was just looking at the past 4 or 5 years. You finished 10th, then 4th the following season, then 9th, then 3rd the following season. So next year, my friend,
Yeah,
have a lot more optimism that it will be another
yeah,
playoff. But I can't
yeah.
end, Nevin, without talking about another huge game for our women's team today. A lot of players from the North East as well in that as well, and potentially a big step can be taken with a victory, hopefully, fingers crossed, against Taipei towards
Okay.
potentially a World Cup qualification.
Absolutely. I think it's a must-win match for India. So, considering I think China has already won the match against Iran, so I think this is going to be a must-win match. And I sort of like I've enjoyed this ride. I mean, I must admit that I've not watched a lot of Indian women's football matches. It's been a very recently we have started watching. So I feel part of the family. I feel like like every time they do something, I'm like it's like. Something that you really enjoy, that you're like, wow, yay, they're doing this move, they're playing that move. A lot of pace in the wings for India, but I think that finishing was a little bit of a problem against Iran, and that might come back to haunt us. But at this moment, I'm just enjoying it. I'm not, overly, analyzing what is happening. I think it's a very big step, and at this moment, we should just take the pressure off
Yeah.
and let our women be just they just let them go and enjoy, let them have the fun because they've worked so much for it.
Well, last week we did a show with Alka Bhattacharya, who gave us a preview of the coming tournament, and it raised my excitement levels to the state that I watched the Iran game, and I thought we were really unlucky. The Iranian goalkeeper had a brilliant, brilliant game.
Yeah.
One of those
Um,
games, yeah.
one of those games,
Yeah.
unfortunately, against us.
Yeah.
I think that you couldn't say anything for the girls. They left it out on the pitch that day. You could see. We've beaten Taipei last year. Let's see. Like you say, let's not put too much pressure on them. But they've all, where they've got to is amazing. And like I said, a big part of that squad is from the northeast. Ashirwad, Nevin, really fantastic speaking to you. Ashirwad, I can't thank you enough, my friend. It's not been the best of seasons, but like I said, look on the bright side. Next year's your year, if we go by the trend.
Okay.
But the main point
Yes.
I,
is,
I, I'm just interrupting. I feel there is enough for you to be optimistic in this season as well. I think things will turn around for Northeast.
and we've got an Indian coach at North East United.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, well, the main thing is stay safe, my friend, and we'll hopefully
You
have
too.
you. You'll be kind enough to come back on the show soon again, because it's always brilliant to speak to you from that part of our beautiful country. But stay safe, and speak to you
Yes.
soon. Nevin, you take care,
Thank
my
you.
friend. I have to rush
Thank
out
you.
now because the
Thank
mighty
you.
Blue
Bye bye.
Army is playing at 2 o'clock, so I'm missing out
Okay.
on some drinking
Rush.
time.
Yes, yes, yes.
All right, take care,
Thank you
guys.
so
Okay. Bye
much.
bye.
Take care. Yeah. I'll see you soon.
Take care,
Okay. Bye
guys.
bye.
Thank you.